everybody. Stephen Evans, your Springfield Money Man. And today I want to discuss a little bit about budgeting, emergency funds, debt, and where you're putting your money. This year has been a big year with coronavirus and all that's happened and the high unemployment and people losing their jobs, and planning has probably never been more valuable. And, when you're doing financial planning, risk management is kind of like the foundation. It's like building a house. You want a strong foundation. So risk management is a huge part of that. And part of risk management is, having a budget, having an emergency fund, and, having the insurances and the things you need, and, trying to take care of debt and, debt because debt's a risk and all these things. So, you want to have a good foundation. And during coronavirus, one of the big things that came out of it was the power of a emergency fund. And, typically with the CFP and a lot of the financial planning institutions, they recommend anywhere from, 3 to 6 months of emergency fund savings. I tend to prefer going 6 months to a year of emergency fund savings, but it really depends on, your job, the safety of your job, your spouse, do they work, are you guys self-employed? So, your personal situation has a lot to do with what your emergency fund number is. The great thing about financial planning is none of us are the same. I have not met a couple who has come into my office that are the same. So we're all a little bit different, so our needs are a little bit different. But one of the things that we see a lot is I've got a lot of, young couples and people, and one of the things that they all want to do is they want to get rid of debt. Because no one really likes debt, because it's not getting you stuff. It's not like, you're paying your house off, or you're saving for a vacation, or your retirement, or building assets, or things like that. So people want to pay off their debt. And I get some people who really want to pay off their debt. And, Dave Ramsey's a big part of this, is because, he does a lot of teaching. He's really popular. Great guy, love what he teaches. But he's kind of tailoring it towards the masses and not each individual person and the risks that they have. So, I get a lot of clients who are just like, I got to get rid of my debt. I got to get rid of my debt. And I completely understand that, but you don't want to do that if you don't have an emergency fund yet, or if you're not building an emergency fund at the same time. So why would I say that you should have your emergency fund and your savings before you start paying off debt? Well, let's say that, we're going along, we're paying off our debt, we don't have a lot in an emergency fund, and something like COVID happens. And everything's fine, you still have your job, but a couple of months go by and you end up losing your job, and now it's just, instead of 2 incomes, it's 1, but instead of having, an emergency fund to take care of you, you spend all this money paying off your debt. So now you have no emergency fund to survive. And what could happen is, now you may have to get a loan. You may have to get debt to survive. And how stressful is that you're going to have to take on more debt just to get by because you didn't have an emergency fund? So one of the most important things I can say is make sure you have a proper emergency fund. When you're budgeting, that should be one of the first things that you do, is budget in saving for an emergency fund. Because we don't know what's going to happen. I had no idea COVID was going to happen. I wish someone would have told me that last year, so I could have planned for this a little bit better. But the good thing is I have an emergency fund, and I even have one for my business, so we had no problems. We didn't have to take PPP or any of that stuff because we planned for the worst case. I tell people and my clients all the time that something crazy is going to happen. And now, doing this job for over, I think I'm on 17 years of doing this. And when you count school, I had, 2001, the tech bubble, and then you had 9/11, then I had 2008, and now I've had the COVID thing. So it seems like every 10 years we're having a major crash. So what used to happen every 20 or 30 years, 40 years, is now happening every 10 years. So I tell people you've got to be prepared for the craziness that's out there. And that's where the emergency fund comes in, because if you have that money, if you lose your job, if something bad happens, you're able to survive. So if you're in a risky job and you've got a year's worth of emergency fund, which is a year's worth of your expenses, put in a nice safe spot that you can access when things get crazy, you've got a year to plan, a year to get a job. You could, on the side go paint houses or do something just to make a little bit of money, but you've got that emergency fund where you don't have to and you can focus on getting another job. So that's why I just want to say, if you're trying to pay off your debt, make sure you have that emergency fund first, or you're saving at the same time, because if you have the emergency fund, you're still able to make the debt payments. But if you don't have the emergency fund and you lose your job and something happens, how do you make those debt payments? And you may even have to take on more debt to do it. So things happen in the world, and the emergency fund is something that is incredibly important. And I recommend you all have one. If you need help getting one set up or you want financial planning help, we are here to help you. I love doing this stuff, and I love the human side of it. I love talking to people, and that's why you work with a human advisor, is because we get to know you. We're going to understand where you are. So I hope you guys have a great day, and I look forward to talking to you again.